COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Well, g'day, folks. How are you? Hope you're having a bloody good day. You can see I've got a little bit more life in me, and that is in part due, thank you, to the X39 patches. Where are they? I can't go very far without them. They have been a huge help to me over the last few days, I've got to tell you. But I think finally turned a corner with the back. Had another session with the back cracker today and finally managed to get in what I managed to put out a few days ago. At least I think I have. So still very tender around the ribs and particularly at the front for some reason, right on my sternum, but very sore there and very sore at the back. Hopefully it's just a bit of the swelling now that the patches will look after. But outside of that, I seem to be able to take a full breath again and walk like a human being rather than Cro-Magnon man, which I think is probably a good start. So my apologies for last night. I just wasn't capable of getting up off the bed. If I'm honest with you. So my apologies. Harm, good to have you, mate. Your back's out as well. That's very unpleasant. Makes it hard to go for a walk on that beautiful beach in your part of the world too, doesn't it? Bugger. Don't like that. Dave O, what do you got to say for yourself? The Rum Gallery is watching the floor. Good on you, buddy. Brucey, I hope you're doing all right. And the lovely Pete is too. Merry Christmas to you and yours too, buddy. I hope everybody's doing well in Maryborough. And look forward to seeing you soon at some stage. This wonderful lady, Sunflower, God love you. I hope you are doing well. There's a few things I've seen from you posted up in the chat while I was prepping the show out. So we might address one or two of those. You never know. Toxic Q, I just pulled a few Merry Christmases out. Same back to you. Phil, what do you got? Oh, your Ainsley Bullion Christmas package arrived today. Ho, ho, ho. Well done. Congratulations. I'm actually popping in tomorrow to Ainsley briefly just to wish them a Merry Christmas. I may have a Christmas card floating around here somewhere. Yes, I do have a Christmas card. Just making sure I had one left. So, yeah, popping in just to see them. But also got a bit of a day on myself tomorrow. I've got that thing on my chest they want me to go back in and have a bit of a talk about. So I'll go back in and have a bit of a talk about what they've got on my chest. But thank you to everybody else who's sent me some natural alternatives to getting myself injected with whatever bloody poison they're putting in their syringes these days and having this thing cut out. So appreciate all that. Very much so. My thoughts on the QFS, Macca? Well, we can get to the QFS. In fact... it's probably better that I hang off on the QFS a little bit, maybe till Friday night. And I'll tell you now, Nick Ragone from QSI is going to come on and have a bit of a chat. Now, QSI folks have been very vocal in their support of what's happening in the financial markets and liquidity that seems to be going into some of those tokens. Now, you might remember... I have a Lobster wallet. It has, I think, about 10 XLM in it. I've got an awful lot of tokens that aren't worth anything. So keeping an eye on that liquidity is always interesting. And when apparently we see liquidity flooding into the digital realm, the tokenized realm, that's when, the QFS will be a good indicator. I did read something today that is very interesting about the Stellar network, but I am nowhere near up to explaining it to you, but Nick Ragone will. And if he can't, then I think Jane's going to join us as well. So it should be a good show to find out a little bit more about where QSI is with the QFS at this stage. And what's going on in the background, because there does appear to be a fair bit going on in the background. There's a lot of excited people. Bradford, our Galactic Larrikin, is one of them. He has been right into QSI now for some time, studies very hard, and is a font of information, if I'm honest. So, yeah, he's right into it. But we will talk more about that Friday night with Nick Ragone, I think. Stu, what do you got here? That dog of yours, man. She's a good-looking boy, I've got to say. I said she's a good-looking boy. That's stupid. 6 and 1/2 dozen the other, but I'm pretty sure it's a boy dog. So I hope you're doing well, Stu, and I hope those patches are doing well for you, bro. You seem to be back on the drums all right, so I'm hoping that's working out okay. Sunflower. Oh, this was a question or an answer to a question about a video you guys have watched. I've seen that too. It's a great video. Stu, this bothers you a bit, the moon rising during the day. Yes, well, in the southern hemisphere, the reason we've been told that we get to see the sun during the day is because the earth has moved on its axis, and that opens up a whole story I don't think I'm going to get into tonight, just between you, me, and the gatepost. So, yeah. Alana, yes, let's get into that right off, shall we? The submissions for the digital identity inquiry, folks. Now, I know that we had until the 15th of December to get onto one of them, but this is a different one. The government are trying to sneak through on us during the Christmas break. The sleazy, cheeky, slimy bastards. That's about the best way of describing what the government are trying to do. They are trying to ram this through during the Christmas period, hoping that none of us are going to take much of a look. Now, the digital identity inquiry needs to have your submission into it by early January if it is to make the grade. So please, if you do not want digital identity to form part of your life going forward, you need to make a submission to this digital identity inquiry that the government snuck in. I think they released details of it at 5 o'clock last Friday and sort of tried to sneak it in under everybody's purview over the weekend. It's been picked up on by, well, a great many people. And yes, submissions to that inquiry should be sent immediately, if not sooner. But I think you have until end of the second week of January, I want to say. So please, every single one of you, make a submission to this inquiry, telling them exactly why you don't want digital ID or anything else, their digital currency or their digital whatever else. I can tell you where all that's going to lead eventually, and unfortunately, it's going to look like this.
Poliziotto robot che verifica, lui sa, va da solo. Telecamera a 360 gradi.
So that's in Shenzhen in China, and that is a police robot with facial recognition software running through those cameras, and it just drives around through the crowds looking at everybody. Now, the facial recognition software backs you up as a tourist. You'll have your papers. You'll be logged in the system as being out of your area in China and in somewhere else. If you're a tourist in the country, it'll have access to your passport and all those sorts of details, where you're staying, who your contacts are, how they can get a hold of you, that kind of thing. And should you be a person that they might find not worthy of a reasonable credit score because you disagree with what the government say, then they will be able to identify you as you going around doing your daily chores in the market, let's say, and alert the authorities to your position, where they can come and either give you a bit of a warning, but I don't know that there's too many warnings in China, and I don't know that there would be in our 15-minute cities either. Do you? Speaking of 15-minute cities, Yip Ya, Cairns Post, put their hand up for it. Isn't that wonderful? That's them putting their hand up for it. That bloke there, his name's Bob Morrow, I think. Morrow, is that his name? Manning, Councillor Bob Manning, just been elected as the new mayor. What does he say he's going to do? Well, 4 more years of business as usual, and that's that his term would be full of innovation and new ideas. So business as usual indicates one thing, but new ideas indicate something very, very different, and innovation. But anyway, he's touted the development of a smart city master plan that would provide a blueprint for the city's growth in technology areas with big ticket items like his team's light rail election promise. Yeah, light rail. Look, I'm a bit of a fan, but it does wreck a suburb while they're installing it. I just got to say. I don't know that Southport has still recovered on the Gold Coast. They're now tearing up between Broadbeach and Burleigh on the Gold Coast. The Canberra Light Rail Network looks like it works pretty well. I haven't been on it, but it looks like it works pretty well. Probably useful for all those public servants. I know during event times, the Gold Coast one works extremely well. And yes, maybe there is need to have one in a city the size of Cairns. However, a 15-minute city mentality by the mayor is going to, I think, make life very, very difficult for the locals. Now, some might say that regional areas are going to cope with 15-minute cities a lot easier than city areas. 15-minute cities in regional areas, like Cairns, for instance, well, the locals, have got to travel, let's say 15, 20, 30 minutes to get anywhere they want around town now. And if they want to travel any further, then it's hours to get somewhere else. So the 15-minute cities will be incrementally put in, I would suggest. And it'll only be those folks who want to go south or want to go north their boats and go fishing that all of a sudden won't be allowed to. Will you even be allowed to go out fishing from Cairns? I doubt it, because you're in protected waters. And if it's not protected now, it will be in the not too distant bloody future. You can guarantee Stephen Miles and his wanker mates in government at the moment will make sure of that, because there is so many big problems that the government have with the people and them stopping access by the people into places where we've always been able to go. And they're doing it in a underhanded way, in league with some of these First Nations people who I can only assume think they're doing the right thing, or they're very, very greedy. And there might be a bit of both. I don't know. So, yeah, it's just difficult, I think, for a lot of people to understand how they're locking up large chunks of northern Australia from fishing. It's been a fishing and very fertile fishing area for Australia and the islanders for many, many years, like forever. Now, our fishery is not in any danger of being fished out. Could the problem be that our fishery might be being infected from the radiation that is still pouring into the ocean out of Fukushima in Japan? Now, while it has had a long time to get watered down, so to speak, before it gets to our shores, make no doubt, it is still getting into our northern Australian shores particularly, and that will be having an effect on the fishery in the Pacific. So they'll be trying to keep as many people out of that, I'm sure, as they can. And I know if you're in the fishing game, you know all too well, you got to steam a hell of a lot further these days before you can throw a net over the side and start making money. And it's just getting stupid for a lot of people. Speaking of stupid for a lot of people, there's something I've been meaning to bring up and just haven't for whatever reason over the last couple of shows. And that has been an experience that someone very near and very dear to us had recently at the Royal Adelaide Hospital. Now, as you know, Vince has his health battles. Well, it turns out that this battle wasn't Vince's, but his son's. Now, his son works in a pub, and I'm not sure if this happened in the pub or at home, but there was a glass involved. And the young bloke took a pretty sizable gouge out of a finger. In fact, two fingers. So they went to the local Mannum hospital, who saw a bit of blood and were terrified and said, "Oh no, you're going to have to go to Adelaide for that." So Mannum's probably close to 2-hour drive, particularly at night, a lot of kangaroos. So they've headed off to Adelaide. They have got to the Royal Adelaide Hospital at about 8:30 at night, where they sat down and commenced to wait. Now, the Royal Adelaide Hospital, you've got to think, it wasn't a weekend, it wasn't a Friday night, it wasn't a crazy night. Shouldn't have been that busy, but oh boy, was it busy. Well, that's what they have you believe at any rate. They had them sit there for 11 hours before they were seen. Now, this young bloke had one hell of a cut, right? One hell of a gouge into his fingers. They eventually took him off. They did scans. They did this. They did the other. They put 15 stitches in it and sent him home. Luckily, no nerve damage. Luckily, no tendon damage. Missed everything with this bloody great slice that the glass made. And it was on, I forget now, I think it's an index finger and the finger beside it. So he managed to get home. But after, I think it was 15 or 16 hours they were there, by the time all the stitches were put in and they, walked out and started heading home. So the Adelaide Hospital is a bit interesting. Obviously, Vince inquired a number of times as to why things might be taking so long, and eventually started getting some truth out of those that he was inquiring of. It turns out that the Adelaide Hospital, the Royal Adelaide Hospital, which is a relatively brand new hospital, which isn't owned by the state government. They lease it from a rather interesting corporation we're trying to find out a bit more about. But they lease it. They tore down the other hospital where they had plenty of bed space and apparently plenty of people to go work there, but not so much anymore. Now, I know for a fact in South Australia alone, there are 3,000 medical personnel who could go back to work tomorrow if, one, they felt the urge to go back and could get past the insulting, condescending, and aggressive way many of them lost their jobs. But bear in mind that these people were being touted as our frontline heroes against COVID for so many months, right? When all that came down, these are our frontline heroes, our wonderful folks who put their lives at risk to be there to help you. And then when it suited the government, they get rid of you too. Oh, well, the frontline health workers who won't get jabbed, well, yeah, we don't need them so much. The brain drain, not just in South Australian health, but in health departments right across Australia, is so significant that one would wonder whether or not you are going to get competent medical care should you have the misfortune of requiring it. I think we've wondered for a long time whether or not you're going to get competent medical care anyway. They might prolong your life a little bit more, but that will depend on how much of they can adjudge they can make out of you between, now and all the pills they can sell you between now and when you die. Because they're bastards like that, just between you, me, and the gatepost. Absolute bastards. Now, that sort of leads me in a weird kind of way onto my next subject. Now, I have been getting, through Facebook, through Telegram, and through private messages to me, both text messages and whatnot, people inquiring about med beds or sending me a link to someone that is, or some organization that is claiming that you can get in line for a med bed. This is bullshit. All right? Do not believe anybody who tells you they have med beds. Okay? They don't. At least not the med beds that you and I are hoping for, that will arrive, we're told, in the very near future. But they're not advertising them on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. Do not give these people your money. All right? Do not. It is my understanding with med beds that should they come into existence, and, you know, praying that they do for a variety of people and for a variety of reasons, but when they come into existence, they will be operated, held and operated by the military, at least for the first few years. Now, there will be a retraining that goes on of medical people who want to get back into the industry, and we might be speaking now directly to some of those 3,000 people in South Australia and God knows how many thousands more around the country who've walked away from their careers in medicine because, or in the health industry, because of the demands that bureaucrats placed on them. So this could be, something pretty significant coming up. You would be, if you are at all interested, I'm led to believe that you will be the first people in line to be retrained on the use of this technology. Now, that retraining could take a few years. And until such time as, I guess, the powers that be at that time are happy that you have completed that training, nobody is going to get any private med beds in their home. Maybe one day, maybe we'll be able to live long enough to see it. I don't know. But at this juncture, I suspect that that won't be the case. If med beds do come into existence in our lifetime, and a lot of people believe it's very soon that they're coming into existence in our lifetime, very soon, then bring it on. The people who will be using them have been trained on them. They've built them. They know exactly how, and I think can be relied on in the long run to teach those medical professionals that want, and of course newbies, how they function, how they work, and be able to use them going forward. But I think that is as I said before, a yearly or a multiple year process, not just something that will happen overnight. So yeah, stay away from stories about med beds, or that sort of. I mean, I think there's a shop opened up on the Gold Coast that calls itself Medbed or something like that. Look, they probably offer something. There are a few different things around, light technologies and all that kind of stuff. I'm not prepared to say what theirs is. I haven't really looked into it, but I can guarantee you it isn't the Medbed that you and I are thinking of. I can guarantee that. Okay. So do not get suckered for that. Do not click on a link on Facebook or Instagram or Twitterwatch or whatever. So just don't. It's not going to help you in any way, in any shape, or in any form at all. Now, Donald Trump. Well, he's had a win and he's had a lose. Where should we talk about first? He had a win in Georgia. I think what has happened in Georgia is really quite frightening. They have now agreed and found out and announced that there were 17,852 votes. 17,852 votes that could not be matched up with any ID or any kind of other correlation in the voting system. That makes them fraudulent votes. 17,852. The judge in this case is incredulous at that number. And funnily enough, nobody from the government side can explain how that kind of thing could happen. They're certainly going to try and get to the bottom of it, but don't know how that could happen. So that's a significant win for Trump. That's Georgia now, with that amount of votes taken out. That's Georgia back in play. Of course, in Arizona and New Mexico, there have been some interesting moves down there as well. With a court case that's going on at the moment regarding the Arizona Secretary of State, I think it is, who has been caught telling people to ignore piles of Trump votes and multiple counting, telling people to multiple count piles of Biden votes, amongst other things. That's the alleged crimes, or some of the alleged crimes, that she is currently standing trial, or at least inquiry for. I don't think it's a trial yet. There will be a significant trial, I think, to follow. But, of course, in Arizona, another very big state that Trump fully expected to win, and we know, having seen the data now, maybe you haven't, but the data is certainly out there, where Trump ostensibly has won every state in 2020. That's what the data says. Of course, the Supreme Court and everybody else says something very different. That would depend on whether or not you believe you're watching a movie, whether or not you'd be concerned about what's going on right now. If you think Biden really is running the world, then I would just ask you to do a little bit of research. Go and find out the difference between the president and the commander-in-chief. And once you understand the difference between the president and the commander-in-chief, you'll get a bit of an idea of where Donald Trump sits and where Biden sits in all of this. So have no fear. That is playing out in the background. I 100% believe that to be the case. 100% believe that to be the case. Ashley Biden has been making the news, which is quite sad. It's sad for this reason. I was so afraid of him coming into the shower with me, I've waited until late at night to take a shower. Now, that's Ashley Biden's diary. Who's the he? That'd be Joe she's referring to. Ashley Biden's diary is going to be explosive, folks, and expect more of it. I'm told a lot more of it between now and the new year. It should be, well, informative, to say the least. Ukraine, very quickly. Zelensky's been out rattling the tin again.
You can't give us some financial support. Okay, please, give us a credit, and we will give you back money after the war.
Go f*** yourself. But go f*** yourself. Is that clear?
I think Elon Musk covered that off pretty well, don't you? I really do. Zelensky has been running around the world asking for more money. I'm pretty confident that he asked Australia to give up making roads and various other things and just send them money. But we inquired, where is the money going? Apparently they're looking to prop up the Air Force a little bit. But you notice there's less and less Zelensky in the news. People have forgotten about the war in Ukraine, so much so that they may not realize that Vladimir Putin declared the war in Ukraine over. He has declared victory in the war in Ukraine. Did the media notice? Oh, no. They're too busy watching the other war that, you know, at this stage of the game looks like having significantly more involvement from Australia. The Americans have announced that they are putting together a coalition to look after businesses transiting the Red Sea. Why? Well, because major oil companies like BP have paused all transits through the Red Sea. Now, that means the flow of oil is coming to a grinding halt. Why? Well, because the Houthis, amongst others, are getting a bit good with their rockets and their attacks, and they've been attacking shipping, including some American warships, which, well, was not only brave, but, well, it elicited quite a reaction. Speaking of reactions, Labor pushing for more immigrants. Yes, don't believe a word they are telling you about tightening visa numbers and, you know, making it harder for second employees to apply again and yada, 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 yada. Bullshit. It is bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. They are going to keep ramping up immigration in this country and make it impossible for genuine Australians to get into their own home. Already now, there are tens of thousands of Australians sleeping rough in their cars every night on the side of roads, beside rivers, which in some parts of the country right now are in flood. These folks have nowhere to go. They have no high ground to go to unless they can drive to it. And, well, let's face it, most of those places are going to be taken up right now, particularly in far north Queensland. So, you know, Labor's idea of bringing in more people, and we know where these people are coming from. We know which areas of business they're going to go into. Well, those areas that they're going into may not have the general businesses that these folks like going into straight away, but they'll bring them. Have no fear, they'll bring them. They're going to be pushed out into regional areas, particularly in Victoria. I believe Bendigo is a big fan favourite of the Labor government in Victoria to put immigrants. Mind you, most of Melbourne is always been immigrant based. Victoria is, you know, always had a very high immigrant content. Italians, Greeks, I think a lot of Turks, a lot of Vietnamese. Now there's a lot of Chinese. Now there's a lot of Indians. Now there's a lot of Sri Lankans. There's a lot of Africans. So it certainly is a multicultural city. The surprising thing is that all those in the multicultural part seem to have a roof over their heads. But those folks who, you know, up until recently, in many cases, did have a roof over their heads, now don't. All because of what the government has done. Can't go on, folks. It just can't go on. And when it doesn't go on, what's going to happen? Well, I think there's going to be a crash. And that's where cash is going to be very important, at least maybe in the short term, before something else comes into play. Now, if that's going to be some kind of free, you know, truly free digital currency, or whether or not we're going back to weighing up silver and gold, I don't know. But I would say just keep watching the indicators. China has signaled to the global market participants that they should follow the pricing of their metals as determined by the Chinese exchanges rather than relying on Western pricing standards. So, my interpretation of what that means, China has signaled to global market participants that they should follow the pricing of their metals as determined by the Chinese exchanges rather than relying on Western pricing standards. That means that if the market participants were to follow that, we're going to see a very significant change in the dominant currency in the world. A very significant change. Now, bear in mind that China are a very large part of BRICS. We were speaking with Paul from Ainsley Bullion only a week or so ago about the amount of gold and silver that China is buying. Why are they buying it? Well, they're buying it supposedly for their solar panel production, which on real figures and real data looks like going up 568% next year. This means they're going to be using more silver than is projected to be dug out of the ground next year. How's that going to work? No, it's not. And when it stops working like it is now, we are going to see some big shifts in the price of silver. Probably some big shifts in the price of gold as well, but the biggest shifts will be in silver, because I believe silver will come up to, or may exceed parity with gold, at least for a while, before dropping back to parity or just below it. They're going to be running very, very close in the future, would be my bet. So if Santa has slipped you a Christmas bonus this year and you're struggling on what to do with it, well, instead of going out and buying a couple of slabs of beer, go out and buy a couple of silver coins from Ainsley Bullion. Pop in tomorrow, I might see you there. and hang on to them. Great Christmas gift idea, the half-ounce Ainsley round. I think they're about $23, $22 or $23 at the moment. What a great Christmas present for kids. Okay, get them into the silver, get them into the gold, get them into collecting, at least in the first part. But this is wealth. This is real wealth. Let them know it's real wealth. And for another $23 after they do their paper round or whatever their tasks are for the week, if there's a bit of pocket money floating around and they're not, well, maybe every second one goes to buying another coin. Maybe. Just an idea for Christmas. But that's my tip. You don't have to spend much, and it could pay you dividends like you would not believe. So go and see Paul, go in and see Steph and the rest of the team at Ainsley Bullion in Brisbane, or go in and see Michael and the team in Melbourne, and they will certainly look after you. I don't know about delivery before Christmas now if you were to get on the internet and buy, but if you want to go for a little bit of a wander, go in and check out the offices. They'd love to see you. I'm sure they're all wearing their Christmas best this week too. So, and when you pop in, say hi from me, and don't forget to mention Voice of Freedom. They love catching up with you guys. All right. So I have an interest in Formula One. I've been involved, on the peripheries of it for many, many years with commentary at the Melbourne event. I've been very lucky. I've had access to not just the paddock area, but access to the pit garages. And I've been lucky enough to sit in the pit garage and talk with Michael Schumacher while sitting on the front wheel of his car. So stories about Michael Schumacher pop up a lot this time of year because we're coming up on the anniversary. It'll be 10 years since Michael Schumacher suffered his accident on the slopes in France that resulted in him being essentially kept out of the public view ever since. We've been told he suffered a traumatic brain injury and that he's a very different person to what we all knew. He is essentially bedridden. His wife, Karina, has kept him isolated, and only the closest of close friends, of which I can really only think of one, and his name is a fellow called Jean Todt, have supposedly been able to have access to Michael. There is even a special on, I want to say it's Netflix, but it could be on any of the others, about Michael and his son, Michael Jr., who was racing up until this year, at least, in Formula One, and is moving on next year to go and race sports cars while he sits as a reserve driver for Mercedes-Benz. There has always been stories about Michael's injury. Always. Michael was always a very private person. He always said he was pretty happy to disappear off the face of the earth, but he also felt that he would be managing his son's career as he went forward through the junior series and into Formula One. And unfortunately, that wasn't to be the case. Well, there have always been stories that maybe the injury wasn't as bad as it seemed. Maybe Michael Schumacher is one of those faces that is going to return to us when everything is revealed with the truth. Now, what would Michael Schumacher be doing, getting taken out of Formula One so that he can come back some years later and say, oh, look, there's a lot of child traffic going on in the world. It's a pretty awful thing. Well, there's a very good reason that might be the case. So he suffered from a traumatic brain injury on the slopes in France. But what we do know is that the biggest sporting events in the world are all about child trafficking. You might recall that the Super Bowl, they put a sting in, and I think they arrested something like 166 men and 3 women with child trafficking and child sex charges through the Super Bowl. There have been a huge number of arrests in Australia at various different times, particularly on the East Coast, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sydney and Melbourne. Michael Schumacher, it is alleged by Q Spartan Warrior at least, that he knew all about what was going on with the child trafficking and wanted nothing to do with it. And while he clearly stayed around in it long enough to know what was going on, he didn't supposedly play in it. And now might be coming back to explain the billionaires, because Formula One really is a billionaires sport. It's really only billionaires and the multi-millionaires that can afford the adrenochrome. That is one of the main products, if you like, of child trafficking and some of the heinous things that they do with the kids. So if you are a Michael Schumacher fan, it is coming up on the 10th anniversary. So I don't know if there's anything in that, but there certainly is a lot of chatter about Michael Schumacher reappearing in our ranks, which, I think will be pretty interesting. Immigration. We were talking about immigration before. Just before I shoot off onto something else, I just want to show you. There's a interesting place in Texas, which you've probably never heard of. It's a place called Eagle Pass. Have a look at this. So that would be, I don't know, a couple of thousand people, do you think? I reckon that's about a couple of thousand people. They're waiting to get through a hole in the fence that the American militia, certainly a military-style militia, has made for them and is keeping open. They are just lining up, waiting to be funneled through the gate. They're not being checked at the gate for anything. Have another look, see how many children you can see. How many women did you see in there? Not too many women, a lot of young girls, a lot of fighting age men. You happen to notice that? So that's what's happening in Texas right now. And, well, it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time. I think we're seeing two things being played out on the border in Texas. And I don't mind so much what we're seeing played out. What I'm wondering is how they're going to rectify it, because many of these people are lost to the system once they get inside the American border, as they are in Australia. America is a bit bigger, though. You can go away and hide in that many places and still get a job. Australia, too, I suppose you can. I'm wondering what happens when our governments decide all our immigrants need to go to the likes of Lightning Ridge and Coober Pedy and, the Palmer River. Will they be... Well, I don't know. No, I'm not going to say that either. It'll be an interesting time. But I'm sure, I know Lightning Ridge, and I'm pretty confident Coober Pedy is very multicultural. So it might all work out well. But the price of housing going to go through the roof, which is a bad thing in the case of Coober Pedy because it puts a bloody hole in it. The sun comes in. Very, very, very ugly. What else have I got on my little thing here to talk about? Far North Queensland. Bloody hell. You folks up there, if you are in the flood-affected areas, my God, my prayers go out to you. I've been trying to get a hold of Rob the gold miner, who isn't out on the gold mine, thankfully, but I suspect that the dams will now be very full, which is a good thing, and he'll be chomping at the bit to get back out there. But that isn't going to happen anytime soon. There are 3 rivers he's got to cross. And right now, those rivers are raging torrents. I'm sure most of you, I didn't download it because I think everybody by now will have seen vision of the Barron Falls outside of Cairns and just the phenomenal volume of water that is pouring over there. Well, that's how it's getting away. Downstream, of course, around Cairns, we know that's been shut down. The airport is now back open. The military are doing flights, and they're getting people and supplies in from Townsville to give those folks in Cairns and surrounding areas a bit of a rest. There have been a huge number of evacuations, particularly north of Cairns in remote communities. And there are a few bushflyers who have been out helping, including Magoo, who has a Robbie 22, and he flew 16 people out by himself off a pub roof in far north Queensland. The Robinson 22 is only capable of taking 2 people, and one of them has to be flying it. So he made 16 return flights and got 16 people off a flooded roof before they wound up floating around with the logs with teeth. And trust me, there are lots of logs with teeth. In fact, I called my mate Skipper Pete, who's in Ingham yesterday. Now, I hesitate to ring up and say, "Oh, g'day, mate, how you going?" Because Ingham, while it sort of only got kissed by Jasper, if you like, at the southern edge, there has been a shitload of water come pouring down that way. And you might have seen on the news there was a croc in the main street. Now, I had it reliable from Pete that the locals weren't too worried about the croc that was running around. He's a local croc. They know him. He just lives in the pond beside the kids' playground, apparently. But there are some new Victorians who've just moved up to Ingham, and they were out doing the shopping and getting a bit of a look around. And they got quietly, well, they didn't get quietly excited. They got very excited, loudly excited about it. So it did create a bit of a hullabaloo. But I guess them's the breaks up in far north Queensland. You might have seen the vision of a couple of blokes up near Cooktown or somewhere just south of Cooktown, went out in their boat just to go and check out whether or not the local pub was actually holding people on its roof like they'd heard. And along the way, found not 1, but 2 people clinging to trees, not just the edge of the tree. They were climbed right up it. And if you'd seen some of the salties that are floating around in that water, some of them are 4 meters plus long. I couldn't get high enough up out of that tree to be safe. But there was one old gentleman there who had been up the tree for quite a few hours, obviously, and was cramped up. Thankfully got him out safe and took him back to the pub. Far north Queensland. God love you. It was an interesting video that I saw, actually, from the fellow who did that rescue. They were talking about having to be pretty independent because they're in the middle of nowhere. The SES and associated other groups are not set up for that sort of regional engagement. If they were going to be set up for that sort of regional engagement, they would need a helicopter at the very least. At the very least. And a helicopter big enough to take enough of them and maybe a boat underneath it to get into an area like that in time to make a difference. So clearly, the SES don't have those sorts of resources in those very remote areas. And if you've never been north of Cairns and inland, you've never seen remote. I mean, maybe if you've been up Darwin or driven through the Northern Territory, you might have seen remote then. But, oh, God, it is remote up there. And it never ceases to amaze me that people can make a living out of growing the rocks and the weeds and the thistles that grow so plentifully up there. But apparently there's some pretty good beef up there too. So God love you all. I hope the cleanup isn't too bad for you. And look, when the roads are open and we can get there, we'll come up and help if needs be. Maybe you need a barbecue host or something like that. Although, I'm going to tell you something. So not only did the backcracker get onto me today, we were talking the other night about, and I'll come back to the chat so I can see what you've put in there. Shit, there's been a lot of comments tonight. You will know that I've been on something of a health kick. I call it something because my body's not really recognizing it as a health thing yet. So shh, don't tell it. If you don't tell it, I won't. Anyway, I've been having a go at this celery juice. I got told by the personally training personal trainer who encourages me by text. Okay, encourages me by text. I'm not sooking in my texts back. I have gone past the sooking stage. Yes, celery still tastes like grass, but I'm now starting to taste the different things in the celery, like the aniseed sort of taste to it, the peppery kind of taste to it, which is, interesting for my palate. And another reason I was probably a bit crook yesterday was I've discovered that instead of drinking 450 or 70 mils of it in the mornings, I might have been drinking closer to 700 mils of it. Had a bigger cup. I thought that was what 500 mils looked like. So I may have been overjuicing myself a bit with the celery, and I paid for that a bit yesterday, just between you, me, and the gatepost. If you have ever done this celery thing, you'll know what I mean. Ooh. Oof. All right, let me have a bit of a look here. That's a beautiful one from Rachel in Tassie. I hope you're going down there, going well down there, Rach. And love to the hounds. You know what I'm talking about. The Chinese are part if they're not. The Chinese are okay if they're not part of the CCP. The problem is, if they're out here, what are the odds of them not being part of the CCP? Particularly the students. I've been fortunate enough to transport a lot of Chinese students when I was driving limos, and you get to have some interesting conversations because their English isn't terribly flash, and they might say things in error that let things slip a little bit. So yes, some of the students, a lot of the students, are very well indoctrinated, and to be rich enough to be able to come out and study a course here in tourism or whatever, you have to have somebody in your family who has a bit of money. They will be part of the party, and the party will have to approve you being sent out here to do any kind of study. So it's not like us being approved to go to China. Here, they approve you straight away. You've got to be approved in China to go to China, and that's a whole different ballgame. So, yeah, anyway, we'll see what happens. Oh, big red one. What happened? Got arrested for shitting yourself at a hospital waiting room. Huh. I would believe 100% how Masonic they are. In fact, take a leaf out of John Wilson's book. Walk up to the bloody desk and tell them that you know who the head Mason is, and that if you're not seen or you don't get something done in 10 or 15 minutes, you'll be on the phone. The head administrator will have his ass pulled through his elbow, and people will be fired. Apparently it works. I don't know. I've never tried it. But yeah, that's well, that's a bit shitty if I say so, Big Red. Just a bit shitty. Sorry for the pun. Is it a pun? Just a bad joke. Solar flares. What's going on, Rach? You're very prolific tonight. Solar flares, polar shifts. Oh, God. Is that going to happen before Christmas? That's really going to muck up Christmas if we have a polar shift before Christmas. I mean, we're going to wind up where Uzbekistan is or something. It's going to mean it's snowing. I'm not dressed for it. I've got no winter presents at all. Anyway, full moon, meteor showers, auroras, perfect time to turn the movie off and bask in the bliss. Now, well, down your way, it would be beautiful basking. In fact, I believe down your way, I'm not sure if directly in your part of the world, but the southern aurora has been showing itself lately. Some beautiful pictures I've seen from folks who are down in Tasmania, camped out down there at night. And My God, what a magnificent view. So that's another must-see. Hopeful of getting back to Tasmania early next year. When I say early, it'll be February, March. If you're in Tasmania and you're keen to catch up, let me know. We'll try and get a couple of shows together down there and get to go and see the West Coast this time. See if I can't drag out my good mate Black Sheep and his camper, and we'll make it a little bit of a journey. And if you want to come too, pardon me, you've got a camper van or you've got a caravan, or you're going to hire one when we get over there, well, why don't you come? Why don't we make it a little bit of a convoy around Tassie for a couple of weeks, and we'll stop and see and do interesting things, have interesting shows, learn new things together. That would be great, wouldn't it? I'd love to see you. So if you're interested in that, email me, carl@vofhq.com, and we'll arrange it. I'm not sure whether or not you're allowed to take animals over on the Spirit of Tasmania anymore. When I was down in Tasmania last year, there was a problem with some animals, some very expensive animals, horses from memory, thoroughbred type horses. There were a number of them that died on the trip, and they weren't the first animals to do that. Apparently, many people had been treated very poorly by the shipping line when their animals had been found to have passed away on the journey. Now, why do your animals, you don't get to see them. That used to be the issue. They were put down in another part of the boat, and you didn't get to go and see them. You couldn't leave them in your vehicle or anything like that. So I'm not sure. I know that animal transfers were stopped, but they might be back on again. So if you've got a dog, or God help you, do you take your cat on tour? Must have it on a collar and a very good leash. Then love to have you. Be awesome to have you on a trip. Got a few people who are saying they want to come on the road. Just got to try and organise their time off when we're heading off. So, but you can always just come and join us wherever you are, or wherever we are. You can just pop along for the ride. More the merrier, so they say. Yeah, thanks, Phil. Yep, they are running these medbed scams absolutely all over the place. It's ridiculous what they're doing. And thank you, Randy. Yes, when the time is right, you will be contacted. My belief is that you will be required to undergo a multiple stage process before you're given access to a medbed. There'll be an assessment time. There will be a planning of treatment time where you may have to detox or, do something else to get yourself prepared. And that might be something to do with your noggin as well, as in getting your head around what they're trying to do to you, or what is going to be done to you, some educational process. And then, of course, there will be the procedure. So that I'm led to believe that is at least part of the process. There might be another interview process where you're, scanned psychologically. They might come and fix that up for me too. God, who knows? I'll be a completely new man. I was talking about juicer, wasn't I? I don't think I finished telling you the story. So, celery juice is, I got told I didn't make it sound very appealing. So I'm going to try this again. Would you like to give this celery challenge a go? If you do, it's going to last 30 days. I've been doing it now for 4, I think. Try and get the measurement right, okay? Get a cold press juicer, because apparently a cold press juicer presses juice better, and you get more nutrients out of it than you do if you use a juicing juicer. Which leads me to my, Houston, we have a problem moment. So today, I had cause to go out and pick up a couple of things. Now, have you ever heard of Pfeffernesses? Have you ever heard of Leberkuchen? 2 German specialties at Christmas time. So went and picked up Pfeffernesse and Leberkuchen, and walked through Harvey Norman. Shouldn't have done that, but walked through Harvey Norman. Juicers and cold press machines have been on my mind lately because the one that I have been using is very hard to clean. For whatever reason, my first experience with it was very painful, particularly trying to get it apart afterwards to clean it. Like very painful. Like it nearly didn't survive the process. That's how painful it was. I was going to the shed to get a hammer. I'd had enough. So walking through Harvey Norman today, bugger me dead. Here's this bloody machine that looks like it does everything I need it to do, and it was at a stupidly low price. And I said to the girl, is this broken or something? And she said, no, that's just the last of the model. We're trying to get rid of it. I said, well, I'll have that. So I got that home. And fair dinkum, it's a hell of a juicer. But the problem is it's a juicer, not a cold press juicer. So I'm kind of in the shit with the physical trainer. I've got to take the juicer back and exchange it for a cold press juicer, which apparently costs a bit more but does a better job. I had to try the juicer this afternoon, all right? Just had to. Don't ask me why, but it's a man thing. And this thing, whoa, bloody hell. I'm going to find it very hard to let it go. I put 3 apples and half a whole celery thing through it in like 10 seconds. And it was magnificent juice. Just spectacular juice. Could have drunk it all day. Apparently you're not meant to. Give you the shits. But, yeah, really, really nice. So, I don't know, a bit torn. May not be cold press juicing. Really do like this other juicer. And, hey, listen, I'm drinking juice. It's better than drinking Red Bull. Because let's face it, I've probably had my fill of bull semen. Might explain why I'm a bit wriggly in places and why I have so many whiteheads, but that's another story completely. How's your week going? All right? Hope we're smiling occasionally, doing the right things. Last night while I wasn't on, I noticed that Ricardo was. They had a pretty interesting show last night. I didn't realize they were running a flag competition. Interesting to see so many great artists in our country, although I'm not sure how many of the flags that were up last night were Ricardo's, because apparently he's quite prolific at making them as well. But I don't believe, actually, now that I think about it, I think I heard somewhere in the show Sarah said that she hadn't put any of his up. So they might have been all yours up there last night. Did see a couple that I really liked, and a couple of that revert back to the square flag, which means something. Yeah, interesting to run the flag competition, but I dare say if you're going to come out with a new constitution, you're probably going to come out with a new flag as well, and he's certainly ahead of the game. Good on him. George, mainstream media saying there's going to be a significant drop in petrol prices over the festive season. You call bullshit. Well, I'm with you, brother. Yeah. I think there's as much likelihood of that as Santa landing on my roof on Christmas Eve. Not big. Rumbles of the US successfully exiting the WHO. I have heard this as well, Rachel. I've heard that there are rumblings of it. Nothing from the US Congress yet, and certainly nothing out of the US Department of State yet. It would be a significant, and I mean hugely significant thing if it happened. But I've heard rumblings. Like I've heard rumblings that Australia are going to pull out of it. But those rumblings are only if we're made to by the people. All right? So we had to get our submissions in for that bullshit. I think it was by the 15th of December. Hopefully you got your submission in time. That will come back before the Parliament in March, I want to say, the 23rd of March. Might be a little earlier than that, might be the 13th of March, for discussion and ratification before going back to the WHO, I believe in early June, to get it all signed off. We cannot allow it to be signed off, regardless of what this inquiry and the results of this inquiry turn out to be. I fully suspect that it's going to be whitewashed by those folks on the in doing the inquiry to make it look like, oh, look, there weren't that many people who were worried about it, so we're going to let it happen. And that'll be what they do with the digital identity bill as well, which we spoke about earlier tonight. Get your submission in for that, and I will get the link for that so that I can supply those pages. Vince, I don't think, is with us tonight, but I'll get him to put them up on the Voice of Freedom webpage, vofhq.com, so that you can download them and fill in those submission documents. It's important, if you plan to do a submission, it's important that you read the submission guidelines and the areas of reference. Make your submission inside those areas of reference. Otherwise, it will not even be read, not beyond the first line where it's something outside of the submission area. It doesn't matter if 99% of your submission is inside the submission guideline area. If 1% of it is outside, they will use it as an excuse to dismiss the entire thing, and they won't look at any of it. So read those guidelines about the submission and what you can submit and how you can submit. Make sure you follow them to the T. Otherwise, it's all going to be for naught. But please get behind that submission period. I think it is open until second week of January, I want to say, but it might be the 19th. I've got a few January things floating around in my head, so excuse me on the dates if I'm a little bit shaky. Thoughts on what Malcolm Roberts said about Bill Heffernan exposing the politicians. I guess I'm in exactly the same boat as Ricardo on this. I've never heard Malcolm Roberts talk about pedophiles in Parliament ever. He said he had his team look into it and they couldn't find anybody that had put a name to any kind of document. Yeah, look, I call bullshit. Heffernan was very aware of the document. He had the document in his hand the day that he was talking to Brandis about it in Senate estimates. That is available on YouTube if you want to watch it. Now, I know some people who know Bill Heffernan. He's in his late 80s now. There are two reasons Bill Heffernan won't come out and talk about this. The first reason is his age, and he just wants to get on and, you know, with what's left of his life and enjoy his family and all that. And I don't suppose he can be blamed for that. The second, and probably more limiting reason, is the fact that he's no longer covered by parliamentary privilege. So any information or names that he, A, can remember, and B, is willing to give us, could get him in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. However, that trouble would be a defamation suit against who he named, or somebody who he named, alleging a defamation suit against Heffernan. Does Heffernan want to spend his life in what's remaining of his life in court? No, I'm bloody sure he doesn't, and he certainly doesn't want to spend the money on the friggin' lawyers and the $1 million plus it would probably cost to defend such an action. But such an action would be useful because it would allow discovery and allow Bill Heffernan to bring out an awful lot of truth into the light so that we can see it. Now, that's never going to happen. The government would never allow that to happen. They'd never let it get to a stage, I don't think, where, you know, they had to supply anything to Bill Heffernan so that he could protect himself from a defamation case. And I don't think Bill Heffernan is going to put himself in that position anytime soon. He was in politics for all his adult life, basically, and managed to get out. I was going to say unscathed, but nobody who's ever been in that place is unscathed. It just varies the depth that they manage to get into you. And I have no doubt there are some good people who've been through that place. Bill Heffernan may well be one of them. But at this point, where he could probably be of the most service he could ever be in his life to this nation, he finds himself unwilling or unable to do so. And that's sad, but that is the reality of where we are today, which is a bit shitty, but tis what it is. Tis what it is. Seeing if I've got everything sorted. Yes, I think I have got everything sorted I was going to cover off on tonight. Nick Ragone is going to be on Friday night for a bit of a chat, and we will talk about the flushing of the financial system then, the quantum financial system. Is it coming? When's it coming? Will Santa be giving us an early Christmas present? And that Christmas present might be an EBS on the 23rd of December. There is so many weird things being said about the 23rd of December. There are a lot of weird things being said about who is going to control any EBS, particularly here in Australia. There's talk it could be anyone from a Governor General to a grandmother. And I'm not clear on any of it at this juncture. So until I am told otherwise, I do fully expect Rudolph to be lighting his way over your house on Christmas Eve. And I hope you've been good boys and girls and Santa is looking after you. Of course, we know there are a significant amount of people that will be getting coal for Christmas this year. They're dickheads. You find them on the road.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!